Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring and my review of issue 55 of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest magazine. This is a Partworks magazine from Hachette Publishing in association with Games Workshop. It comes out every week, priced at $7.99, and is an introduction into the world of Warhammer 40,000. Every week you get a magazine and you also get some cover products, which is usually plastic miniatures, but sometimes hobby supplies such as paints and brushes. As a subscriber, I get 4 issues once a month in a bundle, and this is the first issue from my current bundle. And it comes with some Alchomite pipes. So here are the Alchomite pipes in question. This is from Games Workshop's Sector Mechanicus terrain system, which is a fully modular system of pipes and weird constructs that all join together in various different ways to make lots of different terrain elements, and it's awesome. This terrain is fantastic. It's been around for a little while now. It was sort of launched in at the time that Shadow War Armageddon came out. Shadow War Armageddon was actually the way that they introduced this to market originally. And it is quite weighty, it's quite large. This section here alone is almost 5 inches long. So it's pretty substantial and it looks great on the table. And like I say, it is fully modular. So you can see all these things like these vent openings here and these ends here, which are the ends of the pipes. Those are all of uniform size. So you can actually butt these things together in different ways. The Alchomite pipes that we have here is actually half of an Alchomite Stack set. The Alchomite Stack set retails for £30 from Games Workshop, so the full retail price is £30. So this one frame, I guess, has a retail value of £15. So for the $7.99 that you are paying to get the magazine, that represents a really good value. And although this is only half a set, it is fully usable as is. You don't need the other frame to make this up and use it. You can actually just put these two halves together, stick this this stack element on the top, have this pipe section coming out from the side or attached to this area here, and it will be a fully complete and useful piece of terrain. However, if you have the other frame as well, then you actually get a lot more options because it's completely modular. You have a lot more ways that you can put it together and make other different elements of terrain. So it's up to you really. You can buy just the one and just use it as is, or you can wait. I'm sure at some point the second frame will be turning up on the cover of one of the magazines. Personally, I would recommend waiting rather than actually gluing this all together. There is instructions in the magazine that this comes with for putting these elements together. I would wait until you have the second frame, because then you have some more options and you can make something exactly the way you want it. But anyway, this is a really good thing to have. Because they have given us pipes in previous issues, they've given us the plasma coils, and it all works together and you can attach it together and make big sprawling industrial complexes. It's good stuff. But that's enough of that. Let's take a look at the magazine itself. So Warhammer 40,000 Conquest has a very similar structure issue by issue. The section at the front will be some fluff, some background lore. Then if they've given you plastic miniatures, you will get assembly instructions, painting instructions, any rules that you need to use that miniature, and then at the end there's always a new scenario. And if you've had miniatures, then those miniatures will be incorporated into the scenario. So that's exactly what I'm expecting here. So first of all, wow, orcs. This magazine is geared around Ultramarines and Death Guard. So most often you get background lore relating to those two factions. However, they do diversify and they do try to cover, at least in some small way, all of the elements of the Warhammer 40k universe. So obviously we're getting a little bit on some of the other races. One of my favourite races, the good old greenskins. There we go, we've got Goths, Bad Moons, Death Skulls, Evil Sons, Blood Axes, and Snake Bites. Answers in the comments, everybody. Who's your favourite clan? And there's an orc army ready to cause some bother. I've got some of those miniatures in my collection. Again, those were miniatures that came with Shadow War Armageddon. And then over the page we've got more orcs. We've got a Flash Gits captain. Flash Gits are about to become a retinue option in Blackstone Fortress, the new issue of White Dwarf, which I will be receiving through my letterbox in the next few days, has rules for having an orc Flash Gits retinue character that you can employ and take into the Blackstone with you. So watch out for a video on that in the near future. We also have, oh look, I've got one of these as well. That's a shock jump dragster. I got that from the Speed Freaks game, which was one of Games Workshop's one and done games that was used, much like Shadow War Armageddon, to launch a new range of miniatures. In this case, it was to launch the range of orc vehicles, which are all rather snazzy and lovely. We then have a bit on successor chapters, and a bit more on successor chapters, and a bit on Chaos Rising. It's always doing that. Timeline stuff, and then we are into the build instructions for our Alchomite Pipes. So here they've shown one way of putting it together, and I would assume that these instructions will show how to do that. And indeed they do. So like I say, you can follow these instructions with the frame of terrain you've got, and you will get that thing there with a separate hatch that you can use. You can see here it illustrates the modularity of it, because they've put this fan part here on the top of the stack. Now you can leave that showing, so it'll have like a fan on the top, but they've then put the stack on top of the fan, which hides the fan completely, but creates a different type of terrain. So if you've got two of these, you can have one with the stack on the top, one with the stack separate. This actual stack element works as a separate piece of scatter terrain if you leave it unattached. You don't have to glue all of this together. The way I've used mine is I've kept it in sections. I've glued sections of it together, so I can remove my stack if I want to. Occasionally, you might knock it during a game and it might fall over a little bit or get nudged, but on the whole, it works very well. And then we are into the painting instructions. And we've got a list of the paints that we're using, which includes blue. So I get... oh, wow! Yes, it does include blue. What are you doing, guys? That looks ghastly. So, yeah, the painting guides are great. Good tabletop quality painting guides. If you follow these, you get nice close-ups of everything you're doing. It's going into certain techniques now, like recessed shading and dry brushing, which is fantastic. It's showing you how to do fine details, like the dials, which is really useful. And yeah, and then painting bits blue, which looks a bit ghastly. Yeah, I mean, that is a nice, clean paint job that's going to get those pieces onto the table and looking good. But personally, not a fan of that blue. And yeah, this actually illustrates quite nicely one of the issues that I have with this magazine from time to time. The painting guides are great. I'm not going to knock the painting guides. They do a really good job, and obviously they're still not going into the really complicated techniques, and the results are good. But you can't show someone to paint that and then on the next page go, here's our Alchomite pipes all painted up in what is clearly a nicer paint scheme with like a really grungy weathered finish. And obviously they haven't given you all the paints to do this particular paint job, so I understand why your painting guide gives you that, and which isn't that. But why even show that? Use that. If you're gonna use a picture of a painted Alchomite stack, use the one that's based on the painting guide, because there's going to be people looking at that going, well, how do I do that? How do I get that cool grungy weathered look? I don't like this pristine, fresh out the factory look. I want it all grungy and dirty and grimdark. It's what it's all about. But yeah, that looks much nicer than that. But, you know, good enough. Good enough. So yeah, we've now got rules on what the Alchomite pipes do, explaining cover and how cover relates to units and vehicles. And then we are into a scenario called A Poisoned City. Septic Sabotage. The Death Guard intend to use the manufacturing facilities of Kalon to spread disease into the atmosphere of Corvon 2. The Space Marines must destroy these facilities before they can do so. Space Marine units can sabotage the pipes if they are within 3 inches of them at the end of their turn. A unit can sabotage them once per game. Track the number of sabotages. At the game's end, the Space Marine player rolls a d6 and adds the number of sabotages to the result. On a 7+, the pipes are destroyed. Right. So the victory conditions are 1 point for eliminating enemy unit, 1 victory point for the enemy warlord, 2 victory points if the Alchomite pipes are destroyed, 2 victory points for the Death Guard if the Alchomite pipes are not destroyed. The game lasts for 5 battle rounds. So, yeah, this is something that I don't like. The whole fight a battle and then at the end it comes down to a dice roll. This is something that happens in Space Hulk sometimes, the newer edition of Space Hulk. There are certain scenarios that will say things like, you get so many Marines off the board, then roll the dice, add the number of Marines you got off the board. If you score a certain number, you win. And those sort of scenarios I do not enjoy so much, because in this situation, you need a 7+. The game lasts for 5 battle rounds. Your Space Marine force consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So you could potentially sabotage 6 times. If you sabotage 6 times, you're guaranteed to win. But if you even miss one of those sabotage attempts, and bear in mind each unit can only do it once, if you miss one, at the end of the game you roll a dice, and if you roll a 1, even though you've done really well in the battle, you still lose out on those victory points, and that could be the difference between victory and failure. So I'm not keen on any scenario that asks you to roll the dice at the end, because it can make it feel like it has made all of your efforts up to that point completely null and void. But there we go. That's the scenario. And that is everything you get in this particular magazine. Let's have a look at what's coming up next. So, in our next issue, issue 56, we are going to be getting some Space Marine reinforcements. This is a full frame from the Dark Imperium starter set, and that's a great deal. That's a lot of miniatures. That's a really cool army building magazine. If you see this one in a store somewhere, you can't really complain at $7.99 for that many quality miniatures. It's one to grab. But we will talk more about that another time. Issue 57, not so good on the value. It's 2 new pots of paint. It's Thousand Suns Blue and Temple Guard Blue. Looking at those 2 paints, it's obvious that we're going to be learning how to paint plasma effects. But again, we will talk about that another time. For now, what I always do when I review this magazine is I do a little running tally of the value of subscribing to the magazine. And what that is I tot up the cost of having purchased the magazine at $7.99 an issue, and I compare it to the retail price of all of the products that have come with the magazine. So I don't include any value in the magazine itself. I do not include the value of any free gifts, and also I do not take into account the possibility of getting online discounts when you buy at retail. It is literally just Games Workshop's full retail price versus the price of buying the magazine at the cover price, which I hope some people will find useful. But that is it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider liking if you have liked this video, and if you don't subscribe, please consider doing that as well. And hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.